Throughout history, Earth has witnessed countless journeys of exploration and conquest. From ancient navigators crossing vast oceans to the great empires expanding their territories. In stark contrast, Mars represents humanity's next frontier, a planet explored not by fleets and armies, but by robotic pioneers and telescopic eyes. While Earth's lands were mapped through perilous voyages and cultural encounters, Mars has been charted through decades of scientific curiosity, symbolizing our shift from territorial conquest to the pursuit of knowledge beyond our home planet. Mars versus Earth: historical comparisons of exploration and conquest. What if I told you that humanity's quest to reach Mars mirrors the same deadly obsessions that drove conquistadors to sail into uncharted oceans 500 years ago? Go! The parallels are so striking, they'll make you question whether we're truly advancing as a species, or simply repeating our most dangerous patterns on a cosmic scale. In 1519, Hernán Cortés burned his ships upon reaching the Mexican coast, ensuring his men had no choice but conquest or death. Today, SpaceX engineers speak of Mars or bust with the same unflinching determination. The technology has evolved, but the psychological drivers remain hauntingly identical. The intoxicating blend of glory, gold, and the unknown that has propelled humanity's most audacious and often catastrophic ventures. The psychology of the impossible. The human impulse to explore has always been intertwined with conquest, whether we admit it or not. When Ferdinand Magellan set sail to circumnavigate the globe in 1519, he wasn't just seeking a new trade route, he was chasing immortality through the impossible. The same psychological framework that drove European powers to carve up continents now fuels our Martian ambitions. Consider this: every major exploration in human history began with three fundamental motivations that Spanish explorers called God, gold, and glory. Replace God with scientific advancement, gold with resources and technological supremacy, and glory with species survival and legacy, and you have the exact blueprint driving modern Mars missions. The age of exploration wasn't just about discovery, it was about projecting power into the void. When Christopher Columbus convinced Queen Isabella to fund his westward voyage in 1492, he wasn't merely proposing trade opportunities. He was selling a vision of Spanish dominance over unknown realms. Today's space entrepreneurs use remarkably similar rhetoric. Elon Musk's vision of making humanity multiplanetary echoes the same expansionist logic that justified European colonization of the Americas. The economics of exploration. Here's where it gets disturbing. The financial structures funding Mars exploration are eerily similar to those that financed the conquest of the New World. In the 16th century, joint stock companies like the Dutch East India Company revolutionized exploration by distributing risk among investors while promising astronomical returns. These early corporations funded expeditions that would reshape global economics and eliminate entire civilizations in the process. Today's private space companies operate on virtually identical models. SpaceX, Blue Origin, and Virgin Galactic attract investment through the same promise. Control of the ultimate frontier will yield unimaginable wealth. The Dutch East India Company's investors weren't funding exploration for its own sake. They were betting on monopolistic control over spice routes. Modern space investors aren't funding Mars missions out of scientific curiosity. They're positioning themselves to control asteroid mining, Martian resources, and interplanetary commerce. The risk-reward calculation remains unchanged across centuries. What's particularly chilling is how both eras justify massive expenditures while populations face earthly crises. Spanish conquistadors extracted mountains of silver from Potosi while peasants starved in Castile. Today, billionaires pour fortunes into Mars rockets while climate change ravages Earth. The pattern of prioritizing expansion over immediate human need appears to be a fundamental feature of exploratory ambition. Technological leaps and human costs. The technological innovations driving both terrestrial and Martian exploration follow similar trajectories of exponential advancement coupled with devastating human costs. The development of ocean-worthy caravels in the 15th century enabled European expansion, but these same ships became instruments of cultural destruction. Today's revolutionary rocket technology promises to make us a spacefaring species, but at what cost to Earth's environment and social equity? Portuguese navigators developed the astrolabe and improved compass techniques that made long-distance ocean travel possible. These innovations were celebrated as triumphs of human ingenuity, which they were, but they also enabled the transatlantic slave trade and the systematic destruction of indigenous civilizations. Similarly, breakthrough technologies in propulsion, life support, and radiation shielding are genuine marvels of engineering, yet they're being developed primarily by private entities with profit motives, raising questions about who will control humanity's expansion into space. But here's the most unsettling parallel. Both eras treat human casualties as acceptable costs of progress. Magellan's expedition lost 80% of its crew. Of the 270 men who began the journey, only 47 survived to complete the circumnavigation. Columbus's second voyage introduced diseases that would eventually kill an estimated 90% of the indigenous population of the Americas. We remember these expeditions as heroic achievements while glossing over their catastrophic human toll. Current Mars mission planning operates with similar calculations. NASA openly discusses the probability of crew loss on Mars missions. Private companies acknowledge that early Mars colonists face significant mortality risks. The language has become more clinical, but the underlying acceptance of human sacrifice for exploratory goals remains consistent. The conquest mindset. Perhaps the most troubling parallel lies in the fundamental mindset underlying both terrestrial and Martian exploration. European expansion wasn't simply about reaching new lands, it was about claiming, controlling, and exploiting them. The same logic drives current Mars initiatives. When Spanish conquistadors planted flags in the Americas, they were asserting ownership over lands that had been inhabited for millennia. Today's space agencies and private companies speak of claiming Mars, establishing permanent settlements, and exploiting Martian resources with the same assumptive ownership. The language of exploration quickly becomes the language of possession. The Treaty of Tordesillas in 1494 divided the undiscovered world between Spain and Portugal before anyone had even seen most of it. Today's Outer Space Treaty attempts to prevent similar territorial claims, but private companies are already developing legal frameworks to circumvent these restrictions. The impulse to transform exploration into exploitation appears to be irrepressible. Environmental destruction as progress. Both eras justify environmental destruction as necessary for advancement. Spanish mining operations in the Americas transformed entire landscapes, poisoned water systems, and triggered ecological collapse across vast regions. These changes were celebrated as signs of progress and civilization. Current Mars exploration follows disturbingly similar patterns. We speak of terraforming Mars, literally reshaping an entire planet's environment to suit human needs. The underlying assumption that natural environments exist primarily for human modification remains unchanged. Meanwhile, the rocket fuel required for Mars missions contributes significantly to Earth's environmental crisis, but these costs are dismissed as necessary for species survival. The most chilling realization is this: we're preparing to repeat our pattern of environmental exploitation on a planetary scale, having learned virtually nothing from terrestrial consequences. So here's the question that should keep you awake at night. What if our Mars ambitions aren't evidence of human progress, but proof that we're trapped in a destructive cycle of exploration and conquest that we simply cannot break? Every great age of exploration has been followed by centuries of dealing with its consequences. We're still grappling with the political, economic, and social aftermath of European expansion 500 years later. If we approach Mars with the same mindset that drove terrestrial conquest, we may be setting the stage for interplanetary conflicts that make earthly wars seem quaint by comparison. The choice before us isn't whether to explore Mars, it's whether we can evolve beyond the conquest mentality that has defined every previous age of exploration. The red planet awaits, but so do the ghosts of every civilization that encountered human explorers throughout history. The question isn't whether we can reach Mars, it's whether Mars can survive our arrival. The ships are burning again. This time, they're rocket ships, and this time there may be no turning back.